Welcome to this explainer of sacred stewardship. This is a text that's really going to challenge, pretty much everything we think we know about raising kids. It's a short piece, but man, it packs a massive punch when it comes to the psychology of parenting. We're going to break down those deeply ingrained, honestly often invisible habits we bring into our homes and explore a totally radical new framework for how we view our relationship with our children. So, let's jump right in.
Are you raising a child or enforcing compliance? I want you to just sit with that question for a second. Honestly ask yourself, is your household focused on actually nurturing a human being, or are you really just forcing good behavior? It's kind of an uncomfortable question, right? Our source opens with this observation that just cuts right to the bone. It notes that in so many modern homes, the underlying dynamic isn't actually about mutual growth at all. It subtly morphs into just making sure the kid does exactly what they're told, exactly when they're told. Keep that core tension, nurturing versus forcing, right in the back of your mind as we go.
We call this the compliance trap, and we're starting off by validating a super recognizable dynamic: homes where the primary goal has quietly just become forcing strict obedience. Look, it's incredibly easy to fall into this trap. When your ultimate goal shifts from guiding this complex new life to just demanding they follow the rules without any friction, the whole relationship turns transactional. It literally becomes all about control. And when that control is met with natural, completely developmentally appropriate pushback from the kid, that's when parents usually fall back on some very specific, familiar excuses.
Common parental justifications. You know them. Things like, we never hit the child, or we were brought up in much more difficult circumstances. This just brilliantly illustrates the flimsy defense mechanisms we use when our kids resist. We act as if the mere absence of physical punishment somehow automatically equals great nurturing parenting. Or we use our own past hardships as a measuring stick to totally invalidate whatever our kid is currently struggling with. We're essentially telling them, hey, you don't even have the right to be upset.
The justification is irrelevant. This is where the text gets completely uncompromising. Those classic justifications we just talked about, they completely miss the mark. Think about the heavy weight of that idea. All those stories we tell ourselves about how much harder we had it, or how much more lenient we are than our parents were, none of it matters in the context of your child's current lived experience. Why? Well, because the yardstick we're using to measure their reality is fundamentally broken right from the start.
Parents' underlying reality versus child's underlying reality. The core argument here is that your reality and your child's reality are profoundly different. On one hand, you've got your reality, which was deeply shaped by those specific, difficult circumstances you grew up in decades ago. But on the flip side, you have your child's reality, happening right here, right now, in a completely different modern environment. Because these two realities are so distinct, forcing your historical context onto your kid's present experience just doesn't work. It's not fair and it's not valid. You're both standing on completely different ground.
It's a difference of a generation. That gap in perspective, it's not about your kid being disrespectful or malicious. It is literally just the natural, inescapable difference of an entire generation. The world has changed. The baseline for what counts as a difficult circumstance has shifted dramatically. So when you try to demand compliance by making a kid feel guilty for having it easier than you did, you're basically fighting the unstoppable march of time. You absolutely cannot expect a child to share the worldview and stress levels of a generation they don't even belong to.
Stewardship, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. To bridge that massive generational gap, we've got to pivot to this concept of stewardship. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. It's a real game changer. We have to completely move away from being dictators enforcing rigid household rules and step into the role of caretakers. Caretakers of something incredibly precious that has been temporarily placed in our hands. It's a profound shift in how we view the whole power dynamic under our own roof. Child as property versus child as responsibility. This is the absolute turning point of the whole framework. When you subconsciously view a child as your property, enforcing compliance makes total sense, right? You own them, so they should obviously do what you want, when you want. But when you truly shift to viewing them as a profound responsibility, your job isn't to force them to be convenient for you anymore. Actually, scratch that. It's more like your job becomes to guide them, to nurture them, and to deeply respect their unique present-day reality. You are not doing them a favor. Let that sobering reality check really sink in. Because as parents, there's often this subtle, underlying martyrdom that creeps in. We provide the food, the shelter, the education, the endless car rides to soccer practice, and we quietly think to ourselves, look at all I'm doing for you. We expect this immense gratitude, and when we don't get it, boom, we demand compliance. But we have to shatter that illusion. Raising this child is your fundamental responsibility. You don't get a medal for doing it, and framing it as some sort of favor is a really toxic setup that honestly just breeds long-term resentment.
The child is giving you a chance to heal yourself. If you aren't doing the kid a favor, what's actually happening here? The answer is beautiful, but yeah, it's incredibly challenging. Remember those difficult circumstances we used to justify our strict behavior earlier on? Well, the child's existence, their natural resistance to your rules, their totally different generational reality, it all acts as a giant mirror. It forces you to look closely at your own unhealed wounds. The friction in your parenting isn't a sign that your child is broken. It's literally a spotlight shining directly on the areas where you still need to grow. Will you take the chance to heal? We're going to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with that final, provocative thought. Are you ready to stop forcing compliance and finally let your parenting heal you? We've journeyed all the way from the trap of demanding obedience, right through the irrelevance of our own past hardships, to this profound realization that our kids are our sacred responsibility, not our property. So, the ultimate takeaway here? Parenting is an inward journey disguised as an outward duty. The next time you find yourself demanding rigid compliance, take a breath and ask yourself, what is this triggering in me, and how can I use this exact moment to heal? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today. I really hope this fresh perspective transforms the way you view the sacred stewardship of raising a kid.